We like to talk about movies a lot on our weekend morning shows, but usually it's about, the box office winners, what's going on in the big commercial part of the film industry. But today we're going to make it a little more local with a film festival being held here in New Haven. Joining me now is Gorman Becker, the co-founder of NH Docs. I take it that is for New Haven.
Correct.
First year of it, but it sort of jumps off something that used to be in existence.
Well, 10 years ago there was Film Fest New Haven, and there's been this void in New Haven for a real film festival. And this actually came to be because myself and the three other people that are in it all met in Missoula, Montana at the Big Sky Documentary Film Festival, which is one of the premier documentary festivals. And here we had four filmmakers from New Haven who really didn't know each other.
Why don't we do this at home?
Yeah, and we started thinking this would be a great thing. And Charles Musser, who is a professor of film at Yale, contacted the people at Arts and Ideas and said, can we sort of like tag along with you guys? And they allowed us to use their name, and so we're at we basically become the last day of the festival.
And this is also documentaries.
Yes,
strictly documentaries. Yeah. Let's we're going to take a look at some clips right here. But and what better place to start than your film? You actually made one for this too.
Yes.
And for fans of the band from Minnesota, Husker Du.
Husker Du.
Husker Du.
Like
back in the day, you focused on the singer, the drummer. What was it about him? What was it about his life that made you do this?
Well, I think that he had such a crazy tale. I mean, the band broke up because of his bad addiction with drugs.
Yes.
He had never talked about it. It was one of the things I insisted he talk about in the film. But he was also known as the poppy songwriter. I mean, if there were two songwriters in the band, he was pretty much the McCartney to Bob Mould's John Lennon. And he's had just such an amazing up and down career. He's seen everything, done everything. And I really wanted to show what a life in rock and roll was.
And bands with two geniuses are always very interesting.
Yes.
Because you hear so much about Bob Mould as well. Also, I found very interesting, there's a documentary about Errol Morris, the great documentarian. So
right.
You made a documentary about a guy who makes documentaries. What's that about?
Well, that's Charles Musser's film. And he basically had spent a few days with Errol, and it's basically like a look into the life of Errol Morris, but it's also at a time when Errol's longtime editor had just passed, so it's actually watching an artist.
For him.
Yeah, it's watching an artist go through a hard emotional time.
He made, of course, the great movie The Thin Blue Line. He made the movie about Robert McNamara.
Well, Fog of War.
The Fog of War as well, which are just classics
right.
Of the kind. We live in almost a golden age of documentaries.
Yes.
Not only because of all the television channels where they can air, but just all of them being made in places like viewable on Netflix. What's the power of the documentary?
I think that people are finally starting to realize the documentary is not what we thought of when 30 years ago, when you and I were in school, where it was just this a lecture, education.
White papers.
Yes. Yeah. A documentary now can be entertaining. It's telling a story, and it's telling a true story, which a lot of times, I mean, the old saying of like, truth is stranger than fiction really is true. There's a lot of times when you just cannot make up this stuff.
And there's really no rules for documentaries.
Right.
Not like you really need for standard feature storytelling. You can use animation. You can move around.
Which we did,
time.
actually.
You can do so many different things. As a news person, as a television person, I'd steal stuff from them. I always find things to steal because there's always unique ways of telling stories using the tools at your disposal.
Well, what I did with Everything, the Grant Hart doc, which is funny because you mentioned Errol Morris, I actually had seen Fog of War, and I thought, what an interesting thing to do for a rock movie. One person talking, instead of bringing in all the experts that say this guy was so influential, let the one person speak for himself and tell his own story. So Grant is the only person ever interviewed in the film.
And that's always interesting just to get that one perspective.
Right.
Let's talk about the specifics here because it sounds fabulous. It's going to be next week. Is it Sunday?
Sunday the 29th.
The 29th. It starts. There are the details. And let's look at the who, where, when, why. Whitney Humanities Center.
Right over on Wall Street.
Right on Wall Street in New Haven. And you hope this is the start of something big.
We hope so. And I mean, it's free admission.
It's free.
So, we have 4 feature films. And for people who are attending, we even have at 6 o'clock a free barbecue even with vegetarian food. So it's
free movie, free food. What's not to like,
exactly.
Ladies and gentlemen? Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.